And welcome to our center in Santa Barbara. This is Luther, the person that does really everything and is in charge of our web development for the last 15 years. So everything you've seen on the web page, credit goes to Luther for all of that. It's really very amazing, yeah. He was also instrumental in finding this building, actually. So he just sent me we were looking for a year and a half, and he sent me a text and said, hey, look at this building. And I looked and I said, Luther, please, just tell the real estate agent whatever they want. We'll just take the building. And Luther goes, oh, well, we don't even know what the rent is. And I said, Luther, have you told the guy we just want the place? So then I said, Luther, have you talked to the guy yet? And Luther goes, well, he's actually not available. And I said, Luther, just go to the real estate agent and just give him an empty check and let him sign anything they want for the building. And so he went over, and the guy shows up. Luther goes, oh, the guy showed up, and he's showing me the building. Luther comes in. He's on FaceTime. He's Mr. Communication Technology expert, right? And shows us. I was like, Luther, please, just sign the check, please. Just give him the check. So, and this is Nick Ware. Nick's been with us many years also. Both Nick and Luther moved here about a year and a half ago. We're here because of Yoga Soup and Eddie Elner. And Yoga Soup is a yoga studio here in Santa Barbara, very famous. And Eddie promoted us to come out here. And we came out here in one trip, and it was over. We're like, okay, we have to be in Santa Barbara. It's just gorgeous here. Our other studio is in Copley Square in Boston. It overlooks the Copley Square Park and the First Public Library and the Trinity Church. It's a gorgeous space, so if you're in Boston, please come. It's really good in the summertime. I'll be there all summer. I'm here the rest of the time a lot. Nick's done all the research that we've done at the center initially, and he's going to talk about that a little bit later also. The building was a condemned building. The Santa Barbara Historical Society owns all of these buildings. It's state land. The Santa Barbara's Contractors Association rented the space, and then all the money went into renovation of the space instead of going into rent. So from the studs in both directions, everything is totally green. So the insulation in these walls is recycled blue jeans. All the walls are soundproof. All the floor finishes are non-toxic. All the paints are non-toxic. Everything we brought into the space, all the wood we brought in is FSC lumber, Forest Stewardship Council lumber. We were like that anyhow. If we didn't find a building like this, we were going to make one, because that's what we're like. Organic. Underwear's organic. Everything's organic. You'll see in the kitchen when you go get food today, we have fabulous food made by Bonnie. The most exclusive food you'll probably eat in quite a while. We really outsource food here. Santa Barbara has incredible food here. The farmer's market's only about 3 blocks away. I hope you all decide to do that if you want to do that. Let's see what else to tell you. Solar powered, infrared heated, just about everything you can imagine is housed in this whole building here. I don't know, what do you need to know? What do you want to start with? I made a little discovery. As you probably know, I was injured in an automobile accident. I was hit by a car at 70 miles an hour as a pedestrian. In order to rehabilitate my body, I made a discovery that when animals stretch, all animals, and we're animals, when all animals stretch, they actually tense and resist when they stretch a muscle. So you watch it every day. The animals are trying to tell you, and we're not listening, but you watch them reach forward, and once they reach forward, they go, they do that thing, you know how they do that? Well, that's contracting the muscle when they stretch it. So unlike in traditional stretching or even many yoga practices, people think if you just keep yanking on your muscle and make it longer and longer and relax it, it's going to get longer. It doesn't really work, actually. It's quite dangerous for the joint structures. But instead, if you let your body naturally tense and resist, you'll get a change in the flexibility of the body. Don't you do it in the morning sometimes before you get out of bed? You go like this and you go, you do that thing? Well, that's what it is, right? You're contracting the muscle that you're stretching. We're going to show you how to do that with every muscle in your whole body. When you start to apply that principle into your body and you finish a stretch position that involves your whole body, it turns into a yoga pose. Those are the end positions that happen to your body after you've actually isolated a muscle, and then you include your whole body, it turns into a yoga pose. I was never taught yoga, never happened. Knew nothing about it whatsoever, had no interest in doing it whatsoever. But I made this discovery in order to rehabilitate my body, and then I started squirming on the ground, and I created yoga poses. Yeah. So I had to give credit to the yoga community. To make a long story short, after I discovered how to stretch a muscle, the biomechanics started to get much better in my body. That really worked. I wasn't one of those flexible people. But then I was stretching this muscle on the outside of my leg one day, and my bladder contracted. And I thought, oh, that's so weird. So I called a really good friend of mine from California, and she said that was the energy channel in Chinese medicine. I was like, oh, no, I have no interest. I'm already associated with yoga, and now you want to associate with... No, it's not happening, not Chinese medicine. So then I stretched my lateral quad, and my stomach contracted. And so then I called her back on the phone, hey, Evelyn, do they have a stomach meridian in Chinese medicine? She goes, of course they do. And I said, is it on the back of the shoulders? See, we're from New England, not California. We do everything based on proof, yeah. And she goes, no, Bob, it's in the lateral quad. And I said, yes, that's exactly where I found it. I'll call you right back. Then I stretched out my posterior medial hamstring, and my pancreas area contracted. Do they have a pancreas meridian? Oh, Bob, they have a spleen-pancreas meridian. I don't know where my spleen is. Evelyn, I know where my pancreas is. I said, is it on the posterior medial aspect of the leg? And she goes, yes. And I said, I don't know how they figured it out, but very specific muscle groups are actually affecting my physiological functioning. That's what's happening. Stephanie's exposing the non-toxic felt and rubber mat that's underneath of our organic cotton rugs, actually, yeah. Yeah. We actually have in our studio, when it's not like this, we usually just have 16 carpets in here, and they're all organic cotton rugs that we had specially made for us by a company called Habitacore. They come from Portugal. Well, that was cool. So now I could affect my physiological function, because after being hit by a car at 70 miles an hour, your guts don't work so well. You pee in your pants. You don't poop so well. All kinds of things don't work. So that I could now fix my body biomechanically was great, but that I could fix it physiologically, I was really happy about that. But I'm a very thinky kind of guy. You can probably tell, right? And so the psychological part was the part I was really interested in. In Boston, they're attracted to a Mel Gibson look for the guys, and they like kind of a Katy Perry look for the girls. And you notice I don't have either of those looks. And so when I walk down the street in Boston, nothing happens. It doesn't work. But if I go to Costa Rica, they really like my look. So if you put Mel Gibson over here and Brad Pitt over here, this mug is what they like. It's great. So I go there twice a year just to help my ego. There are countries you can go to that balance your type, and if you go there, you are the best looking thing they have ever seen in your life. So if it doesn't happen where you are, we can tell you what type you are, and then we can tell you what country to go to, and you get to have the same experience I had, okay? It's a really good thing. Hi, Janice. Good morning. So anyhow, I was stretching out muscle groups. I'm kind of an autodidactic learner, so I don't like formal education, because I find most teachers actually don't tailor the teaching to me. They want me to learn the way they do. I don't consider that teaching. So when I found out about the Chinese Medicine Association with me, I didn't study Chinese medicine. That wasn't going to work for me. I got a book. I kept it in my house. And then I kept staying in my stretch positions until I found out which organ fired. And when it did, I looked it up in the book, and lo and behold, it was exactly the muscle groups associated with that meridian in Chinese medicine. That was cool. But I stretched these muscle groups out the front center of my body, and I walked outside in the morning, and every single person hit on me in Boston. I ran home as quick as possible, and I looked it up. It was sexual meridian in Chinese medicine, right? Yeah. They're too uptight to call it sexual in China, so they call it conception vessel, which kind of limits its functions. So then I've been doing that stretch more. No. And so then I realized, oh, these stretches are really affecting me psychologically. Now I was interested. I mean, I wanted my body back, but psychologically, I really wanted that part. So then I started staying in stretches all day, sometimes for 18 hours a day for a month. I was kind of like a monk for a while. So I've already done self-stretching more than most people will ever do this in their whole life if you start today. I don't recommend it, actually. I think self-stretching is fabulous, and assisting, you get much more done. So we're going to show you how to do both of those things. Both have enormous advantages. But I started staying in stretches, and all of a sudden I'd say be in this stretch that stretches out the outside of your leg, associated with the gallbladder in Chinese medicine. And I noticed that my visual focus turned to the color green, which is not the color I'm normally looking at. That was an outside change. I also noticed that I became much more sensitive about if I was stretching and there was somebody else around. how they were actually viewing me when I got stretched, but normally I could care less. And then I also noticed that my thinking started to revolve around when I wanted to say, go eat breakfast while I was doing that. My mind would start giving me all these different options, and then based on all the options, my mind would decide I would decide what I wanted. That's decision making. It's a high trait of the type. And so I just recorded all that information. It became a theory of genetic personality types. So the moment the sperm hits the egg, the type's determined. Can't change. Doesn't matter whether you marry the Dalai Lama or Marilyn or anybody famous or fabulous or have the most enlightened experience in your life, we find the type doesn't change. It doesn't box people in. It does just the opposite. It explains to you why you feel the way differently around different people. So I have different feelings with Luther and different feelings with Nick, and there are different types, and I can explain that based on types, and it helps me to deal with both of them. Otherwise, we would already not be associated because I'm really difficult to be with. I discovered about the personality types. So we'd like you to have that experience today. We'd like you to have the experience of how to tense and resist when you stretch a muscle in order to get an immediate change in flexibility. And we would like immediate, cumulative, permanent change. And the reason why you're doing that, want to throw me that Tensegrity, Luther? Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. So what happened was that when Nick and I went to France, and with Gimberto, have anybody seen Gimberto's films on YouTube? He's the world's authority on endoscopic viewing of fascial structures. And there was an ultramarathon guy there with a problem in the back of his leg, and Gimberto cut a 6-inch slit in the back of his leg without any anesthesia to the muscle, just to the skin. And then there's an endoscope that goes right outside of the cut, and we had the young man contract his hamstring and lift up in order to strength train his bicep of his leg. No change in the fascial structures. That's the stuff that surrounds your muscles. And then we had him traditionally stretch. Nothing happened to the fascial structures. And then we had him tense his hamstring, and while he tensed, pulling his heel towards him, and we pulled away, the fascia immediately started to transfigure in his body. And when it came back, it wasn't the same. And then we presented it at the Fascial Congress, and GE found out the future of rehabilitative medicine is in the alteration of fascial structures. We filmed her bicep, which had 4 pieces of accumulated dense fascia in it, and we stretched it, nothing happened. And then we traditionally strength trained it, nothing happened. And then we had her tense and resist and did that. In 1 rep, it was already ripped out of the muscle. In other words, you're literally destroying accumulated dense fascia and scar tissue, or you're transfiguring it or hydrating it. And the part that you rip apart, if it's scar tissue or too much dense fascia, actually goes into your bloodstream, and then your lymphatic system cleans it out, and then you poop it out, pee it out, and sweat it out of your body. The fascia that surrounds your muscle tissue you have a skin and fat, and then you have a layer of fascia, and then you have your muscle, and then your tendons and bones and all the other stuff in there, right? And your skin and your fat and your muscles are different tissue. But your fascia is not like that. The fascia doesn't just stay around the muscle. It impregnates into the fat. It goes into your skin. It roots into the muscle. It roots into the tendons. It roots into the ligaments. It goes into the joint capsule, goes around the circulatory system, venous and our blood flow. It goes into your nervous system. It goes into everything. So your fascia is like the soup stock, and then all the other stuff is the meat and the bones and the stuff you put in the soup. So when you tense and resist, you don't just change this material that surrounds your muscle. You change the material. If you have too tight of tendons, it changes the fascia in the tendons. And if you have too much fascia in your arterial circulation system, it changes that material. Everything gets changed. It's not just a mechanical thing. In traditional Chinese medicine, last wrap and then we'll start. Okay? In traditional Chinese medicine, if you thought of the body as, a right cylinder, I'm a math guy, a right cylindrical tube, right? So if you took 8 of them and put them next to each other like this in a circle, and then you squished them into a body size, they turn out to be the meridian pathways in Chinese medicine. So you have one on the outside of the body, and one on the inside, and one on the front, and one on the back, and on the 4 corners. So you're really 4 tubes, and then you get shaped, right? So when you stretch this muscle group on the anterior aspect of the quad, thigh here that goes up your body into your face, it goes right up into your vocal cords and affects singing. So we worked on Singers and X Factor, and the guy was being voted off the show, and we changed these muscle groups in his body, and he's been voted off the show for 4 shows, and he won the show. Turns it around. You can affect the person. It's much more powerful, I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to put medicine into your hands, right? Spirituality, as Chris Northrup has explained to everybody, is now out of the institutions. It's not just in an enclosed building. You get to find it in all kinds of places now. And that's true of food and all kinds of education. And I'm trying to bring psychiatry into your hands and your health into your hands so you can evaluate your own health. So you're not just waiting till you're somebody like my age and you're thinking, oh God, is the liver going to go? I mean, am I going to die of whatever? And instead of that, you'll already know based on your flexibility what your organs are doing in your body. And then sooner or later, Western medicine, you're going to be able to take your phone and you'll go, probably within the next 2 years, you'll be able to take your phone and pass it by your arm, and it's going to tell you how much dense fascia and scar tissue you have based on averages, norms, and optimals. You'll be able to put your phone on your arm and move your arm, and it'll give you your range of motion of your body. Medicine's coming to you. It's coming to you on your phone. It'll be fabulous. So then you get to analyze your own range of motion, your own physiological health, and then you get to decide the most incredible accumulation of dense fascia and scar tissue in the human population, regardless of age, gender, religious preference, or any other preferences, is housed in your lateral hamstring. Doesn't matter. So this muscle group has got to be stretched. It controls your bladder, genital urinary functions. And so we really want to change that muscle group. Any of the muscles on the outside and back of your body have the most fascia, very little fascia on the front and inside. So the front and inside muscle groups are very easy to change, and the muscles on the outside and back are very difficult to change. Can we show you first before we begin so you get the concept? What's your name? Christy. Hi. Hi. Nick and Luther, you want to help me for a second? Christy, we're going to show you something. Can you show us your Baddha Konasana position? Can you just sit on the white rug there and show us your Baddha Konasana? Can you do it with just the feet together in a simple version? Okay, only made 2 discoveries. When you contract a muscle and stretch it, when you do that, it changes the elasticity of the muscle for a greater range of motion. First discovery. Second discovery, muscles don't just shorten. It's dependent on the flexibility. So the moment you increase the length of the muscle, it can then shorten further. Muscles can go 50% more than their normal resting length, and they can shorten to 50%. So if they only stretch 10%, they only shorten 10%. And flexibility is not the end game. That's the vehicle to get you where you want to go. The flexibility gives you the capacity for the muscle to contract and to move. That's what you want. It's not the flexibility. You want to get into the strength part, and this is what he'll give it to you. Based on what I just told you, and thanks for the great position and all that kind of stuff. And so my question is, why are the knees further not down to the ground in that position?
Because, and I'm a professional dancer, but
okay.
Anatomically I've always had very tight hips.
Okay, and so you feel the tension in the front of your hips?
My hip flexors.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always been an issue for me. This is actually really good.
And I want to let you know that all women, mostly women because they're much more sensitive about their body this way than guys, feel like they're tight in the front of their hips when they get in that position. No. No dense fascia and scar tissue in the front of the hip unless there's been direct trauma to the body. It's in the outside back of the body instead. Most people when they're in this position find that they're tight on the inside of their legs, right? And that's why they think their legs don't open. Is that right? That's what you're thinking, right? Oh, no. Muscles on the outside can't shorten. Not the muscles on the inside. The limiting factor in a stretch is never the muscle you're stretching. It's always the one on the other side. I'll show you. We're going to do it assisted just so we get a fast result. Guys, want to do it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cece, why don't you, either direct. Well, I'd face the mirror so you can see yourself. It's more fun. Yeah. Okay, watch this. Don't let anybody drink this. I'm going to support your lower back in this position. Okay, so in this position, what most people would do is force their knees down to the ground. That doesn't work. That would just overstretch the inside of your legs. They're already feeling tight because the muscles on the outside can't shorten, not because the inside is tight. Get that? It's because the ones on the outside can't shorten. We're not going to stretch the inside at all. We're just going to stretch the outside. So as CC pushes outwards with her knees, we're going to bring her knees together. Here we go. Just resist them, please. Yeah. Can somebody be in front and hold her feet so they don't slide forward? Please help. Yeah. Yeah, please help somebody. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Marlene. Here we go. Let's try that again.
That feels good.
Okay, here we go.
This is fired up.
There's some interesting things about stretching fascial material. If you can lift 25 pounds with your arm, say 20 pounds with your arm, when you tense the muscle and stretch it, it generates 2 to 6 times the force. So the resistive force of stretching the fascia is 2 to 6 times the weight that you can lift. So the force that she's generating outside, and now strengthen her instead. Push out. Look, nothing on their part for strength. Everything on her part. Huge forces on her part. Yeah, now push out. Now the work's on their part. Yeah, easy for her, hard for them. Cool. Here we go again. When we usually stretch people in an hour, if they're trained, you can do 1,000 movements in an hour on a trained person. We're now going to do about 20 and see what effect we get. Thanks. And just one more, please. Okay, cool. We didn't stretch the inside at all. We just stretched the outside, right? It's resistance, flexibility, not traditional stretching. She was pushing down. Okay. Okay.
Amazing.
You can let your hands go forward if you want.
Amazing.
When you do this stretch, by the way, the priority is not the legs coming down. It's this thing happening. So as time goes on, this will happen. She can pull her legs down, but if you don't do that, that's really the true range instead. And if the outside of the legs, let's stretch the inside out a little bit. Let's see what happens on the inside. Want to hold her again, Marlon? Yep. The other thing is that the fascia that we're stretching is not connected to your brain, like your muscles and the joint capsules and your ligaments and your tendons. So there's no sensation, so we're getting huge changes in the body, very little feeling whatsoever on the person's part. Lots of feeling when you strengthen a muscle, very little feeling when you stretch the fascial material. Let's try it again. Yeah. She's a plant. We've really been stretching her for 3 years. And this is a plant. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
These guys are good.
And once more, please. Thanks. Let's see what that did now. So now we stretch the inside. Let your body sit on back up again. Let's see what happened again. Yeah. Yeah. See, less control to have to pull the legs down. And once more. Now that we've stretched the inside of the legs, they can now shorten better, which they need to do when you stretch the outside. So when we stretch muscles, we always do a muscle on the one side of the body, then do the other side, and then we go back and forth again. Because every time you stretch a muscle, it can now shorten better, which allows you to then stretch the muscle on the other side, because this can now lengthen, and you can now strengthen this because this can lengthen. Everything's based on the muscle on the other side. So our target was this muscle group, so we did the outside first. Now we're going to do the inside. Now we'll do the outside again. We know Dr. Northrup, we know Chris Northrup because of Nick Ware. Nick sent her an email about the fascial structures and the fascial work we were doing. And Chris was like, and it got lost in their emails, of course. And then her assistant said, do you want to respond to this? She was like, I'm going down there immediately. And so she came down to Boston. We stretched her out one day, and she was like, how do I continue? I'm like, you have to come here more. You're in Maine. It's not so far away. Why don't you come down? Why don't you come down for a weekend? So she came down for a weekend, and she was like, I need more. I'm like, why don't you come down for 3-day weekends? Why don't you do that a couple times a month? She was like, okay. And so that's what she's been doing for the last year and a half. And we just stretch her out, make her feel good. Eat all organic food. We have an infrared sauna, a redwood steam room, and sustainable forested redwood steam room and shower, and nice place. Yeah. We have Tibetan rugs there because it's warm. We need warmth there, and these are cotton for California. Okay, cool. Want to try it again? Let's see what happens again. See, the priority is this part here. Yeah, you can let your arms go forward if you want again. Yeah, see? They're not inside your body, except for people that are trained to be able to do that. So can you tell them what you're feeling inside compared to what it was like before?
So I feel all of this fired up, and then there's no tension in my hip flexors, and there's a release of the body and a freedom so that there's ease. I mean, I can't make this happen because I'm saying it's just tight. And now that these muscles are stretched and fired up, there's a new kind of space.
So everybody thinks you're tight in the front of the hips. They're not tight. They're tight on the back of the legs. Let's find out.
Amazing.
Let's go do it. Okay. Do you want to stretch the hardest muscle first so we can get it out of the way? Okay, good, okay. Here we go. Yeah. You want more room, just come in closer, like, wait, I don't need this much room. Yeah, here we go. So I want to stretch out the muscle on the outside back of my leg. So if I want to do that, when that muscle contracts, it kicks my leg down, it kicks my leg out, and it rotates my leg out. So I'm going to have to do the opposite of that in order to stretch it. So I'm going to grab the outside of my foot with my hand, and I'm going to have my knee out to the side. And as my knee kicks out, and as my heel pulls down, I'm going to push my leg up and across, pull it up and across my body in order to feel this stretch. And then I'm going to keep pulling up and let my leg win, and now I'm going to strengthen the muscle. So I'm going to start by pushing out and pulling down with my hamstring where it pulls my heel towards me. And then I'm going to push my leg up and across my body and look up and stretch out my lateral hamstring. And I'm going to do that 5 or 6 times. And every time I do that, I'm going to let my head go back. When I come up and take my head up, help yourself. Yeah. Do it 5 or 6 times on each side. Do a couple sets, and we'll come around and help you. If you didn't get it the first time, forget it. Okay. Watch, everybody. Let's do this. Watch. So what most people think is that the further in range you go, the better stretch you get. That's what they think. That's not how it works. The more resistance that you use when you stretch, assuming that it doesn't lock up your joint and you're allowed to move, the more resistance you use and tension, the better stretch you get. So it's not really about how far you go. It's about really feeling your hamstring attaches to the bottom of your pelvis and then bifurcates around your lower leg, right? And so when it contracts, it actually pulls your lower leg down towards you. So as this muscle is pulling this down, and as it pushes your leg out, you're going to push the leg across and kick down here while you lift this up and across, and it ends up rotating this bone internally. And then you can feel this stretch here. The number of sensory receptors in your leg compared to your fingers is pathetic. And so if you feel it with your hand, your brain knows it's happening. Your brain's connected to your body, but the light switch is your awareness. So if you don't feel the muscle stretching, your brain doesn't know it's happening. Doesn't matter how much you do it, if you're not aware of it, there's no connection, there's no current connection. Wild, right? Because you would just think if you had a brain and you have a body, they're connected, right? Oh no, they're not connected. You connect it through your awareness. And so if you feel this with your hand while you stretch out your hamstring, you'll get 3, 4, 6 times the change in the muscle if you don't touch it. Anybody good at, have you watched people stretch? They're like, have you seen them do it? They touch everything, right? The more you touch it, the better results you get. Let's try another hamstring. The central hamstring. So if you're in a position like this, your central hamstring also does this movement, a similar movement. So as you're kicking or pulling your heel towards you to contract your central hamstring and feeling it with your hand, your back leg pulls you backwards. You're not just contracting your quad and straightening this leg, you are contracting your hamstring, but the floor is stopping your heel from coming towards you as you move backwards. And then the leg pulls you forward in order to strengthen it. And then again, you're pulling this towards you and doing that, and you're feeling it with your back hand. Oh yeah, that feels good. Help yourself. Do both sides. Yeah. Catherine's a PT. When I decided to try to, after I got hit by the car, I really couldn't walk very well. and couldn't lift my arm up at all. So a friend of mine threw me in a lake and thought, gee, if I swim, I can make my other arm figure out how to move, right? I had already spent 4 years at the Callaway Medical Library studying stuff, and the reason why I did that was because I thought doctors were too arrogant, and so I couldn't handle being around them. I didn't know I was arrogant. See, it was just triggering me. And so I spent 4 years doing that every day in the Callaway Medical Library, and then I realized physical therapy didn't really know still enough about how to change flexibility in the body. So then I went to all the best people in the country, and I actually finally got to David Simons, who co-authored the Trigger Point Manual by Janet Travell. And he did trigger point injections in my pec, right? And he did 5, and he said, okay. I said, why are you stopping? And he said, oh, no, well, people can't handle more than 5. Really painful injections, right? And I said, oh, no, I got run over by a car at 7 miles an hour. I'll let you know when I'm done. 23 injections later, I'm like, okay. Wow. And he goes, why are we stopping? And I said, well, every time you hit one of these knots in my muscles and you hit it with the needle, the muscle finishes the contraction and finally releases. It's a Charlie horse. I said, but I get a memory of what caused it. And right now I don't see reality anymore. I just see the past memories of what happened. So I was like, you know, David, I don't mind the pain, even though it's painful, but it's not working. I mean, I have thousands of these things in my body. How am I going to do this? So then what I did was I just went back to my house, and I had read this story about a guy that was tired of being poor. He was a plumber, and he told his wife he wasn't going to get out of the chair in his house until he figured out how to make $1 million. And he came up with the idea of how to put life back in tennis balls. Have you seen those things? You put your balls in the tennis ball and you screw it like this and it vacuum packs the ball. He made him a millionaire, right? So I thought, I'm not flexible. I'll just sit here just like that guy until I figure it out. So I decided every day for an hour. I was teaching mathematics at Williams College, right? I'm a math guy. And I was sitting there and I was like, I'll just sit here every day for an hour until I see what happens. And all of a sudden one day my body started to move. I was like, I have no idea how this is happening. I call it divine intervention. I don't know, whatever. It just happened. And my body just kept moving and moving. I was like, oh my God, this is a really good thing. I'm like so glad this is happening. My body just kept going and going and going. I was like, oh shit. It didn't happen again because I didn't know how it happened. I didn't do it. And then the next day it felt like an eternity. It didn't happen. All of a sudden it started happening. And I was like, how is this happening? I know these are the exact muscle groups stretching. They're contracting. That doesn't make any sense. Muscles don't contract when you stretch them. You relax them. No, they're contracting. I thought, well, if that's true, and I got in this position, my muscles are now long, so if I contract them by kicking my leg into the ground, the muscles should release, and I should go back. That's working. That totally works. Nobody ever told me that. How come nobody figured that out before? I was like, oh my God, this is really good. And I was like, oh shit, I'm going to ruin my back. Oh God, this is a real problem. Oh no, don't keep going back. Oh shit. Oh bad, really bad. Oh no, not good. And then I was like, I'm really going to hurt my back when I get up. And something says, I call it Hal. The voice in my head, I call Hal. Hal goes, push harder. I'm like, okay. I was like, oh my God, I figured out how muscles stretch. In PNF, Dorothy Voss, they use resistance at the end of the range. No, 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 whole range. You don't strength train at the beginning of the range, do it at the whole range instead, right? So that's what happened. I take naps. I mean, do I look like it's killing my knees? No. Does it look like I'm arching my back like crazy? See? So when you're in this position, you can't go back and you think your knees are killing you because you're ripping your knees apart because your hamstrings can't shorten. So instead of extending in your pelvis, you're hyperextending in your back. So instead, if your medial hamstrings contract, they extend your pelvis, and then you don't hyperextend in your back. You stretch your quads out as long as you're kicking down with your legs. See how that works? That's how that works. Not a problem. Okay, let's stretch some more muscles. So now you know a couple ways to stretch a lateral hamstring and that hamstring in the middle. But for women, a very big deal, and guys don't talk about it. You probably already know. The endometriosis and the myofascial conditions that show up in the female population, which is more pancreas associated and associated with martyrdom in particular, are associated with the medial hamstring here. So the way you do that is that instead of stretching your leg across your body or up in the center, you open it to the side. So you start in the middle, your leg's kicking down again, your knees squeezing in, and you push it out while your knees pushing in, and you lift your leg up and out to the side. Cool. Okay. Cool. Help yourself. You can do one leg, 2 legs, do whatever you want to do. Let's try something else. There's a lot of database on the wall about stretching. There's a lot of data here. There's 4 parts of stretching. When you stretch, there's 4 things that happen. One thing that happens is you have to position yourself in the right position. That means the bones have to be in the right position in order to get a stretch. So that's the first thing. And you also have to get comfortable. So when you're doing Supta Virasana, when you're doing this, everybody knows that the knees ultimately should come together. The pose is not done out here. That's a different pose. The pose has to be here. But the rotation of these bones is important. And what most people have done in yoga is have hyper-internally rotated their thighs, which actually just causes SI joint problems and knee torque. When you're making this stretch, these would have to kick down. Don't do this. I'm just showing you the concept. These are doing that. This is doing that. These are doing this. This is doing that. This is doing that. Opposite of the position I'm in. And when you do all of that, then what happens is that you actually get a stretch. That's the position, the bone rotational relationships. When I stand up, to get into that position, I point my toes. I bend my knees. I bring my knees closer together. And I extend my thighs and extend my pelvis. That's what I did compared to standing, right? To get in this position, I altered all those things. So to get a stretch, you just do the opposite to get back up into position, to stand. I'd have to try to do this, try to do this, try to do this. So if this is the standing position, to get a stretch, all you do is whatever you did, you try to undo it to get back to standing. So I push down here, lift up here, push out here. You do the opposite of what you do from standing. Whatever you do to get into the position. But watch. Compared to standing, I pointed my toes, I bent my lower legs, I brought my knees together, and I took my thighs away from my body. So if I did the opposite of that, I would flex my feet, I'd extend my lower legs, I'd open my legs, and now I'd be in a balancing position. So every pose is balanced. All you have to do is reverse everything you did to get in it. Every pose is like that in yoga. We call them balancing poses. You just have to do the opposite of whatever you did. So the first part of stretching is about the position. So you have to know what the positions of your bones have to be in and which muscles you're actually stretching. And then, if you know that, then you actually know what to do to create the resistance to get a stretch. Without the resistance, you don't get a stretch. But the first part is, and then you might have to squirm around and make it comfortable for yourself. That's all physical. The next part that happens is you have to know what's happening. So your attention has to be on that part of your body. So some people have fabulous looking positions, but they can't tell you anything that's happening. They're mentally undeveloped. They psychologically don't get the benefit from the stretch. They're physically developed but not psychologically developed. Other people can tell you everything about this, but they don't know how to squirm around and get comfortable. They're physically undeveloped. They don't have the instincts. They don't know how to process their anger. The breathing. America's an emotional culture. Obvious. That means we want more air. Can you help out with the windows? Can we give us more air? America is a breathing culture. It's an emotional culture. Emotional types know about breathing. Well, it just so happens, I don't know if you noticed it, but at nighttime, when you wake up in the morning, you actually didn't control your breathing at nighttime. That's not what you did. Oh, I see, there's an involuntary system running the breathing. Oh, you don't have to do it. Oh, it's based on a foundation, an involuntary system. Oh, that's cool. That means when you stretch, every muscle in your body asks for a different way to breathe. So if you make it breathe a particular way, it's not the way that muscle likes to breathe. You have to find out by paying attention to the area you're stretching. If you do that, your body will start to change the way it breathes. That's just right for that muscle group. Don't make it breathe. If you find yourself holding your breath, that's part of breathing. You inhale, you hold the inhale, you exhale, and you retain the exhale. There's 4 parts of breathing. So don't tell people that hold their breath to stop holding their breath. They're doing that part. They know that part. They don't know the inhale part. They don't know the exhale part. They don't know how to retain the exhale. Don't interfere with people's breathing. Let the people breathe. And you'll find out they'll add all 4 parts. All 4 parts of breathing are going to happen sooner or later to get a stretch. That's just what happens. Sometimes when you do a stretch, your entire time is on the physical part. Sometimes when you're stretching, your attention is on the psychological effect. Sometimes when you stretch, it's all on the breathing. Sometimes when you stretch, it's all on the resistance or yielding. At any moment, your attention's only on one thing at a time. It doesn't divide. You can divide, but it doesn't divide. So at any moment, we'd say, okay, what are you having now? What's happening? And when we do stretch classes here, instead of like in a yoga class where, in most yoga classes where, say I'm the teacher and all the data's, all the bullshit's coming out of my mouth, that's not how it works in our class. I show a stretch, everybody starts stretching, then I say to people, okay, what's going on? What's happening, Kat? What's happening with your stretch? Everybody becomes the teacher. Everybody in here has so much more knowledge than I have, it's just retarded. Why do you think I hang out with you? Because I want to, what's it about? You guys know what I need to know. So then when we stretch, we want to know what you're knowing. And somebody's going to know about this, and somebody's going to know about this, and they're going to know about different kind of stuff. Want to find out? Watch this. Can you try the, let's try this pose. And I'm going to ask different people what's happening. We're going to do what you did, only a single leg at a time. So we're going to work on the outside of the leg. So as your leg's going to push out, and you're going to resist it with your hand. And now your leg's going to keep kicking down, and while it kicks down, you're going to bring it up to you. We're going to stretch this muscle group on the back side of the leg. Can you do like 15? Let's see what happens. Okay, cool. Oh, yeah. Oh, I feel that back here, and it goes into my glutes, too. Help yourself. Oh, you can do this. Oh, I get more comfortable this way. I think I'll do it that way. Maybe I want to do it this way sometimes, too. Oh, I'd like to do it back here, too. Oh, different positions I like to do it. Okay, help yourself. What's happening for yourself on this? Where are you, Lori? Where's your attention?
My attention's on my left.
On your left glute. Okay. Mm-hmm. Is it on the muscle itself, or is it more like on the... where it attaches to the tuberosity of the ischium? Okay. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's happening for you? You don't know where your attention is. Okay, put it somewhere. Can you put it on that poster while you do this and tell me if it stays there? You can put it there? Yeah. Wants to be on the back of your leg. So, yeah, put it on the back of your leg instead, okay? Yeah. Okay, here we go. Here. No. Here. No. If you come late, you take it over. Here we go. You got it. Here we go. Yeah. Try it on the other side, too. Yeah. Where are you, Marlene? Where are you on that? What's happening for you? You're back there. Okay, yeah. What you got there, Ricky? Outside back of the leg. Posterior lateral leg. Yes, I agree. Yeah. Be more. Judy, tell us more. Everybody listen, we have all these different teachers. They're insulted if you talk when they're talking. Here we go. Is it where it crosses across the back, or where it's here? Did you get it in the sacroiliac joint or up here? I'm not sure. Okay, I know. Okay, but I want to know. Do you feel that in the muscle itself, or is it in the joint back?
I have some scar tissue there.
Okay. Okay, thanks for telling me. Okay, yeah. What do you got there, Jennifer? What's happening?
I just switched legs, but
Okay.
previously I was doing it right here.
Okay, that's great. Okay, thanks, Charles. What do you got?
Piriformis and tensor fascial.
Okay. A lateral hamstring has much less fascia, has much more fascia, so much less feeling. So what's actually happening back there? You're just getting where you have sensation. Please understand that the more accumulated and dense fascia you have in your body, the less sensation you have in that part of your body. So instead of you feeling that part of your body, you don't feel that part of your body unless you direct your attention there, and that means you're depersonalized. Don't have a body there. Because if you don't have dense fascia and scar tissue, sensation comes up into your body, and then you're aware of your body. But if you don't have it, you've been depersonalized, and that means there's too much dense fascia and scar tissue. Dead, some people call that. Oh, this leg's dead. You had 2 surgeries over there. Just 2? Why didn't you capitalize and have a dozen? Why just 2? No, just kidding. I'm kidding. No. I'm not diminishing the value of it, please. Yeah. Disconnected. You probably don't want to know this. Oh, you do? Oh, you do? We're trainers here, and we work on people's bodies, and when we're working on, say, that leg that's been injured, we can feel where the dense fascia and scar tissue is, And then we can make a movement where you resist and we can strip that right out of your body so that you can actually get your leg back. But when we're doing it, we're pissed that your leg hurts. I'm just letting you know. And the more angry we feel about that, the more sensitive our hands become. And then we know exactly the movement to make. Otherwise, if I kind of go, oh no, I don't want to hurt you, I'll probably injure you. But if I'm aware of the anger that I have because it's pissing me off that your legs hurt, besides feeling compassionate towards you, the more anger I feel about that, the more actually I have sensitivity to know how to fix it. Make sense? Isn't that cool, right? Because the part of you that's a healer is a monster. And you're just transmuting that monster part to be a healer. Just ask any little kids, they're like, right? They know the monster, right? Where the wild things are, right? That's the part that's a healer. Make no mistake. Okay, so that's the outside of the leg. Can we try something for the arms? Yeah. Back of the shoulders. How come people have tension on the back of the shoulders? Yeah, how come? Where's it coming from? Chest is tight. Oh, no, they're tight in the chest. Oh, no, it's always on the opposite side of the body. Oh, the chest is too tight. Oh, that's why it shows up back here. Let's see if that's true. Can you put your hands behind your head like you're at the beach?
Like this?
Yes, cool. And let your elbows come up towards you. Thanks. Yeah, please don't resist me very hard.
Okay.
Squeeze in, and while you squeeze in, I'm going to open your arms just a little bit. That's right. So she's squeezing together. Barbara's squeezing her elbows together. Okay, cool. And I didn't go down very far. I don't want you guys to do it either. Now squeeze back up, and I'll resist you. And that's strength for the front. And now you keep squeezing in, please. And while you squeeze in, I'll open these. Keep resisting me. I'm going down at that angle, everybody. Yeah. Cool. And then squeeze back up again, Barbara. Thanks. And once more, please. Keep squeezing in, please. So that stretches out the chest, right? But we'll have to stretch the muscles on the other side. So want to start with your elbows out instead? Don't, everything matters. Yeah, I'll show you. Just keep pushing down, please, Barbara. Not so hard. Less force, Barbara. Not that strong. Yeah. It feels like nothing to you. It's huge forces. Yeah. Thanks. And push out again. This is her strength. See, it takes no effort on my part to counter her strength. But if she keeps using that much muscular contraction, resist, the fascial resistance I can't overcome. It's 2 to 6 times the strength. That's almost impossible, and she's being polite about it. Push out again, please. I'll show you. Watch. Give me everything you got, please. Pushing out. Keep pushing out. There's no way in the world to say I can do it. It has 2 to 6 times the force of the concentric contraction. So can you pair up with each other? Don't open them too far. Don't close them too much. Person's going to resist. Let's open up the front of the chest. Yeah. Thanks, Barbara. Everybody, let's be with us. That's probably the first time you got the idea that the resistance is so much greater than the strength, right? You try to lift them up and they're resisting, pushing backwards, and it's impossible almost. Only they don't feel anything. So they think you're pathetically weak, but you're not. It's actually because the fascia has that much resistance. So you have to tell the person to back off until it's easy to do, right? It's strength training for you, and it's stretch for them. And when they stretch, it's strength training for you. See? It's perfect. So you get strength out of their stretch, and they get stretch out of your strength. So both people get really good things out of the deal. It works out that way. But the discovery that the resistive force when you stretch is so gigantic, you're going to have to learn that a bunch of times before you realize, oh my God, no wonder my back hurts. The fascia in my hamstring is so intense, it's yanking the crud out of my back. And all you have to do is stretch that out. So low back pain comes from your lateral hamstring. If you change this muscle, when you stand up, as you stand up, if this muscle doesn't shorten, then what ends up happening is that your pelvis stays flexed and your back stays arched. And that creates problems for the back. But if the hamstrings have been stretched, they can now shorten. And as you stand up, they shorten and they rotate your pelvis up on top. It's not your abdominals, it's your lateral hamstrings. And then your back doesn't have the curve in it. The problem in the back is coming from your lateral hamstrings. So we really need those to be stretched out to protect your lower back. Really important. For women here that are working with other women athletes, if you work with any women athletes, she doesn't go to AMC Theater where they kill you. If you have when so this is very important to protect the lower back. But if you're working with women athletes, a huge problem in young athletes is showing up in the ACL tears in the women athletes. And the biomechanics are different for women. The shape of the bones are a little different in the pellets, whatever, than it is for the guys. And so it's showing up much more in the women than the guys. And so, not that it's not like endemic in the guys, but it's a big problem for the women. So we need to fix that problem. And all you have to do is change the central hamstring. Right? Same as this, only I did a line on my back. Or I can do it a straight leg. Or I can kick down with my leg, and as I kick down with my leg, I pull it up towards me. And if you do that, this changes what happens at the knee. So buildings are supported by struts. But buildings don't walk around. So you have a skeleton, and it supports you like a building does, only you're moving. So something's got to protect the joint structures. When your thigh bone comes into your lower leg bones, if it was just a column, you would destroy this structure in the first 3 months of walking. So what happens is that all of these muscles that traverse your knee are full of that fascial material. And when a fascial material is a tensegrity structure, see, it's not a column. The whole weight is supported around the outside. You push on it, it's supported around itself. So this is what's happening, and your knee's inside of here. So when the weight comes down, it goes all around the outside, and then you have a nice suspension at your knee joint. And then you don't hurt your knee or your back or your elbows or your spine or anything, because it's all suspended. But if there's a dense fascia, if this becomes too dense or scar tissue, you now have a collapsed structure. And now you ruin the joint structures because you have compression instead of suspension. So if you remove this tension in the central hamstring, it decompresses the knee joint, and then you're no longer destroying the cartilage and soft tissue structures of the joint. Really important, okay? That's fascia.
Can you just share your thoughts on the emotional storage in the body and the muscles that a lot of yogis and
So as you know, I mean, let's be sobering about it. As you know, guys know much less about emotion than women do. I mean, come on, it's across the board, right? We know that guys are more physical and more thinky, more psychological that way, and women are much more emotional, much more spiritual. Okay, that's the bias, right? It's true, but it's also not, right? But it's kind of like that. I don't use the word emotion in the way that other people are using it. I don't call anger and stuff an emotion. I call it a feeling. An emotion to me is an attachment. Do I want that camera? Well, I like that camera. I want that. That's an emotion. It's a desire-based, right?
Okay.
So what happens is that if you're in a stretch position and you're stretching out tissue, and at a certain point you get skilled enough where you start to breathe the way the body wants to breathe in the stretch, your emotionality starts maturing. So instead of liking some creep, you actually find somebody that's better. Just because he has the house, the boat, and the car doesn't mean you want that creep. You want somebody that you're also physically attracted to and who actually can see you as a person and not as an object, right? It's obvious, right? I'm one of those guys. So that's how that works.
Okay.
So what happens when you stretch out a tissue, like I have damaged tissue in my body from my automobile accident, and they've been stretching it out. Like, they're doing a great job. And Luther, Nick, Noelle, did you meet Noelle? And Noelle works here. She lives here in Santa Barbara. The moment you have a trauma in your body, this happens to the fascia. And now that part of your body stays that way for the rest of your life unless something intervenes. So now you're walking around and say you injured the side of your leg. This is now happens at 5 and you're 30. This is now 5 years old. This never grew up. But if you remove the dense fascia in it, all of a sudden it releases that, and the memory is released, and you process it, and now all of a sudden that part races forward in time while you're already moving through time. It catches up, and this part now is emotionally mature at the age you're now at, or it has the time to start to mature. Otherwise, it can't mature. So based on traumas that happen to people, whether it's a spiritual abuse, you saw somebody when you were 12 years old and you thought, I'm marrying that sucker. That guy is perfect for me. And your dad's like, oh yeah, we're moving. That's called a spiritual abuse. Or say you wanted to go to college. Jen wanted to go to college. So I was like, oh no, girls go to home decoration school. You're going to go to home ec class instead. That's a spiritual abuse. That shows up in certain kinds of tissue. Oh, your brother's smart, but you're just not smart, so. You know what I mean? You have to sell some other part of yourself because he's smart and you're not. That's a psychological abuse, right? There's 4 kinds. Physical abuse, repetition or blows to the body. There's 4 kinds of traumas in the body. And they show up in different kinds of tissue. We already know where it's going to show up based on the kind of trauma. But the moment you tense and resist, that's how you pull that trauma out of the body. And the moment you do that, you have the wisdom of the event and a gift of a high trait that was hidden underneath of that trauma. But if you don't do it, you go the other direction. That's how it works. So when we're stretching people, oftentimes I'll be like, little red wagon? You fell on a little red, you were 7. They're like, how do you know that? I'm like, well, I'm stretching your leg out and I'm getting an energetic hit. And when I pay attention to that energy, that feeling, my life events use all of those in my imagination to create what matches that. And it looks like you fell off a wagon when you were 7. She's like, I did. I'm like, well, we got to get the wagon out of you, right? Wagon's still in, right? So there's an energetic phenomena that's quite separate from an emotional component, which is a lack of emotional maturation. So if you want the partner, regardless of whatever gender they are, or animal or musical instrument or whatever it is the hell you're dating, whatever that thing is, some people have never matured up to humans. They're into musical instruments. I work with some of the best in the world. They never made it to a human. They're into their violin, right? They can't do humans yet. I know other people that are into plants. They never made it there. They're great with plants, right? Keep going. And then sooner or later they pop up into these irritating things on 2 legs. So they need to mature, but it happens at different rates for everybody. So that's what you kind of need to do when you're with somebody. And we're very open about this in our center. We're very transparent. So I could be stretching your quad out, and all of a sudden it affects me in a particular way, and I start telling you, oh my God, I hated that when my mother used to do that to me. The session's not just about you. It's my life, right? I might be getting something I need at that moment, and you're helping me do that. It's not just about you. It's a very different format, right? So does that help at all?
In so many ways.
That starts a little bit, right?